All right, there we go.
All right. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to start with what I would call a look under the hood of our church. Okay? And so this is going to be the most churchy night that we've had. So we're going to just talk about the gathering a little bit. And then I hope the second half of what we talk about will make sense as to why we did it this way. But we'll see what happens. All right. Go ahead. This is what we call our identity statement. All right, as a church. So, sometimes organizations, churches have mission statements, vision statements, purpose statements, those kind of things. This is for us, all of that wrapped into one. And you may have heard this before. I hope you have. If you've been to Starting Point, you probably have. We are a Christ-centered, grace-oriented church on a mission to connect more people to Jesus. Okay, so just to break it down, the first half of it, to right about here, this is kind of who we are, right? The two kind of defining character traits of our church is that we're Christ-centered, we're grace-oriented. And then the next part is what we do on a mission to connect more people to Jesus. Now, this is who we want to be. This is who we think we are. And this is aspirational for who we want to grow into. And so at any given time in our church's history, you would look at us and say, well, maybe we're not as Christ-centered as we should be. We need to grow in that area. Maybe we're not as grace-oriented as we need to be. We need to grow in that area. Maybe we're not connecting as many people to Jesus as we should be. Maybe we need to grow in that area. But let's have a quick discussion. Because you guys, this is a really interesting group of people as far as how long you've been at our church. So let's just go across here and tell me how many just in years and or months, how long you've been here. Starting right over here with our longevity champs. You guys have been here since?
The math is hard.
February of 2011.
How does he know?
I was going to say, it's not 2013. Yeah, sorry. Yes, February of 2011, all right?
January, beginning February this year?
So less than a year, all right?
Same with us, February.
Okay.
End of February.
What was going on in February? Everybody showed up.
Realized we need God.
2022. We originally started when you were in a Recplex.
Oh, okay.
Because my daughter had 2 preemie babies, and I came and stayed for 3 months, and we found Yellow Pages. Yellow Pages was still and then we were visiting, and then we came once a year, and every year we came to visit. We visited, and then one year we came to visit, and she said, "That's the building." I said, "You sure that's not a bowling alley?" And she said, "Mom, we want to save money," and so I said, "Great, I want to go there." But we, like I was saying one time, we really pray before we join a church and fast and and ask the Lord, and so I felt like we're supposed to go where they're going. So we had 2 adult children with the grandkids coming here.
Yep.
And we came back to Ohio from Hawaii for we were gone from all over for 30. We were in Hawaii for 33 years, and then we came here in 2021, and we started the church in 22. Because when we first came, you were online.
Okay.
It was still COVID.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Yeah. And the bowling alley thing, you're not the only one. So when Andrew interviewed, you, wasn't it?
Yep.
When Andrew interviewed to come, one of the first questions, I don't remember if you were Sam that asked.
Sam.
It's like, so did this used to be a roller rink? So, there you go. All right.
I was happy to hear why it looked like this. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a couple of years.
A couple years.
Yeah,
Okay.
years and some change.
All right. Good.
I think we've been kind of regular, but right out of a year, just over a year. I think we started like in January. We visited several churches in the area.
Okay.
And I think we chose gathering and started regularly like in April or something. So
Okay. So right about a year. All right. I would have thought longer on you, but
2 to 3 years, maybe.
Okay.
I'm not really sure.
all right. So somewhere in there. Yeah. Okay. All right. So a pretty good span. So that being the case, you may all have different ideas on this. What do you think it means when we say we want to connect more people to Jesus? Now, what does it mean to be connected to Jesus?
Have more people understand about him and who he is.
Yep.
It means the Holy Spirit, because that's how you connect to Jesus.
Okay. really not a right theological answer to this. There's lots of good answers.
Have a relationship with him, you know, recognizing his life, death, and resurrection was for you, and that, you know, that changes you.
Yep.
And then be the kind of person you are.
Anybody else? All right. So in a lot of ways, success for us as a church is measured by seeing people get connected to Jesus. The difficulty with that for us is it's not like we're selling widgets, right? It's not like, well, if we sell more widgets this year than we sold last year, that's success for us. But when you have this kind of amorphous thing of, what is it, like, are more people connected to Jesus this year than they were last year? Yeah, probably. But I mean, there's not a lot of tangible ways to measure that. And then the other question is, well, what about the people who are already here and who already were connected to Jesus? Are they more connected to Jesus? And so that becomes a little tricky for us to measure that. And so we don't spend a lot of time worrying about measuring that. But what we have identified is, hey, there are some things that we do. And we think if we do these things, then more people will get connected to Jesus. Now, obviously, the Holy Spirit's a huge part of that. And it's the part that we can't measure. And so it's like, if we're faithful in this, we'll trust that God will be faithful in that. And so we've got these 6 kind of core ministries that we have. We'll go to that next slide. They're in a honeycomb shape because I like honeycomb cereal. So, but these are the 6 things that we do as a church. We have worship gatherings. We do discipleship. We do kids and youth. We take care of people. We do community outreach, and we invite. So I this was kind of obvious. This is what happens on Sunday mornings. We have worship gatherings. Discipleship generally happens in groups. We would say that what we're doing here is a kind of discipleship, because discipleship is essentially just helping people be more like Jesus. And so, if being a part of this class helps it be more like Jesus, then this is discipleship. Kids and youth is kids and youth. Taking care of people, and I'm going to unpack these 2 a little bit more here in a second. Taking care of people is really meeting the needs of people who are part of our church. And so we do our best to do that. We've got like a benevolent fund that we can use when people are having trouble, and we look for other opportunities to do that. Community outreach, by the way, this Sunday, don't come to church, right? If you don't have that memo yet, don't come to church, but it's Community Service Sunday. And then inviting is kind of this multifaceted thing where it's like, hey, we want you to invite people to know Jesus. We want you to invite people to come to church. And then we also, take really practical steps. We have a marketing strategy. We buy ads in different places because we think, hey, if we can get people to come to the worship gathering, they're going to hear the message of Jesus. That's what we want. That's what we're spending a little bit of money on. All right. So sometimes you look at all these things like, well, how do you really know what they are and how you're doing? So we've actually developed this grid that we use to help understand what each of these core ministries actually is. So go to the next slide, Lincoln. This is terrible vernacular, right? Insiders and outsiders, but it works. Okay? We would say there are no outsiders. Everybody's welcome at the gathering. But you understand, there are people who are a part of the church and there are people who are not a part of the church, right? There's maybe 1,200 people who are a part of our church, and then everybody else is not. So that's insiders and outsiders. And then we've identified that in life, there is normal life, right? Like your everyday routine, when you're just in a routine, you're going through life, there's normal life. But then there's also these things called life events. That's when something unexpected happens. Usually, it's bad. Not always, but usually life events are bad. You can call them crises or whatever else you want to call them. And so what we've said is, what does our ministry look like for insiders? Like for normal life insiders. So remember the honeycomb. Can you rethink which things of the honeycomb would be for insiders in normal life?
Care, kids and youth.
Okay, care, kids and youth. We're going to slide care down to here because care is usually something's gone wrong. Worship, yep, worship. What you're going to see is that worship's going to fit in all of them, right? So we kind of something put that in the middle, but good. All right, so what about for outsiders? We'll start with worship. Is our Sunday morning service for outsiders?
I'm kind of
I mean, it's for them, but they're not there.
They're not there, But we want them to be there, right? And so yeah, it's for them, but that's a good point. They're not there.
But you
'Cause
have
as
a
soon as they
virtual-
show up, they're this, right?
You have a virtual presence, though. I mean, that's how I determined to come to
That is
gathering,
true.
because I watch different services in
Yeah.
different churches.
I'm
So
always
that's-
surprised. We have people who will show up, like, hey, it's our first Sunday. We've been watching you guys for 3 years. It's like, seriously?
I know you.
They often say that. They're like, I feel like I know you. I'm like, well, this is weird because I don't know you at all. Right? So our worship services are here for this, right? This is the big thing here is inviting, right? That makes sense. So the big thing here is, I would say, discipleship. And the big thing here is inviting. I'm going to do something with kids and youth in a minute. The big thing here is care, and the big thing here is community outreach. Because for most of the time, our community outreach is targeted at people who are going through something in life. So this Sunday, the two big places we're going to be are building beds for kids who don't have beds. That's because some kind of life event has gone on. And we're also going to Family Promise to help families who are homeless because some kind of life event has gone on. And then usually we say worship goes right here in the middle, and kids and youth goes right here in the middle, because our kids and youth is kind of an extension of our worship, right? This is all more deeply into the weeds than you guys want to go. We don't talk about this externally a lot, but this is something we discuss occasionally with the staff, just to help us make sure we're on target for what are we trying to accomplish. And like sometimes an issue will come up, and it's like, well, how should we deal with this? Is this care? Is this community outreach? Well, let's go back to the grid and say, is this an insider or an outsider? Is this a life event? Is it a normal event? This is how we need to address it. All right. So, in addition to the honeycomb, can we go back a slide? So, here's our honeycomb one more time. All right, now go ahead 2 slides. There are 4 what we call connectors. I don't know if you can read this, it's small. This is the frantic work beneath the surface to ensure simplicity above the surface. I present to you the ministry duck. Okay, so this guy here, if you ever watch the ducks swim, ducks are very peaceful, right? They just kind of glide across the water. I love watching ducks. We were in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan a couple weeks ago, and I was there with the guys from my small group, and they all sleep in because they're lazy. And so I'd be up every morning. First thing I do is I build a fire, so that they could wake up to a nice warm cabin. And then I just go out and sit on the dock and just kind of watch the wildlife. I just love watching ducks. I like them. But what's going on beneath the surface is anything but peaceful, right? They're kicking like crazy because they got to, just to move and go. And so sometimes we talk about our church in terms of, hey, hopefully what you guys see most of the time is smoothness. That's what we want. So if you're involved in worship service, we want that to be smooth. If you're in kids or youth, we want that to be smooth. We want our care ministry to be smooth. It's not always that way. But what that means for us as a staff is we're kicking like crazy because we're doing that frantic work. And there's really 4 things that we really focus on to make that happen. So the first is connections. So I'll show you this. This is great that this is right here. So these are the connection cards from a week ago, 6/1, right? So the journey of the connection cards after they get over here, because they got to get over here, is they go. Lincoln touches them first, right? And Lincoln goes through, and if there's anybody who's a new person, he makes sure they get put into the system. If there's other things, he kind of sorts them, make sure that things happen when they need to do. Then that's all first thing Monday morning. Then at 9:30 on Monday morning, the connection cards join what we call our connection task force, which happens right back in that room back there. And that's Lincoln, myself, Andrew, Steve, and Rebecca. And we're going to talk through all of the first-time guests, all the second-time guests, kids who showed up to youth for the first time, parents and families who showed up to kids for the first time, just to make sure as much as possible we know who they are and what their story is. We don't always get everybody because you can't, but we walk through that. And then we kind of talk about second-time guests and, hey, have we seen these people? And the reason we do this is because connection, where do these go? Right here, back up. Now, from there, they come to me just so I can look through them to see if people write notes to me, and a lot of people do. And then they go to Becca, who sorts through them for care questions, because a lot of people will say, hey, I'm having surgery, or hey, this is going on. And then she can send that out to our hospital visitation team to make sure the care happens. But all of that happens through connections. And the reason this is important to us is because we believe that every person who's a part of our church is a gift that God has given to us. and we got to take care of those people as gifts that God has given us. So we don't want to let anybody slip through the cracks. And we don't do it perfectly, but we do that. Communication, I mean, you guys understand communication is communication. We work hard at that. Volunteers, we talked about this several weeks ago, the idea of recruiting, investing, sending, and encouraging. You know, we want to do that with volunteers. And in fact, so we have these cards. This is so much fun that I have these object lessons. These are cards from Sunday of people who have said, hey, I've got a special set of skills that I can use to help volunteer. So now all of these people, they'll get contacted this week, and then there will be follow-up as we go through the process, and we'll do that because volunteers are important. And then administration, that's kind of the boring stuff that nobody wants to do, but somebody has to do. Like, hey, we should put the money in the bank, and we should make sure the bills are paid, and those kinds of things. Just that kind of keeps us going. But all of these things are what happens behind the scenes so that we can execute our strategy. Let's go back to the honeycomb. Because the honeycomb, this is our strategy for accomplishing our mission, vision, purpose. Let's go back to that. Back one more slide. All right. So hopefully you guys, what I'm doing is I'm kind of laying out for you how we as a church operate. All right. Let's go fast forward now. One more. Okay. This is how we execute our strategy. These are things that I'll talk to our staff about every so often. Of just a reminder. Hey guys, this is how we want to do things. We value people over process. So it's much more important for us if somebody like writes on their connection card, hey, I'm mad about this. We don't have we'll put them into the complaint department and have somebody. No, it's like we got to reach out to that person right away, right? Because people are more important than process. We value names over numbers. We relentlessly follow up, and we take the lead in communication, which means we want to be proactive, not reactive. Which means if something goes wrong, we want to tell people about it before they find out about it through the gossip chain, which rarely happens. These things right here, this is how we build culture. Next slide. Okay. This is how we build culture. And what we'll talk about in a minute is the importance of culture. But I think that one of the reasons the gathering has grown the way it has over the last 5 years is really not about all the stuff we talked about, but it's about the culture. And when people come to our church, and some of you guys are really new to our church, most of the time their experience is really good. And they might have different things that they say, well, I like this, or I like the music, I like the preaching, I like this, I like that. But at the end of the day, good music and good preaching rarely will keep someone somewhere. It's the culture of the church. And I think one of the reasons the gathering's culture is what it is because we prioritize people, we prioritize names, we take the lead in communication. And so we have this church that really feels alive. I don't know how much time you guys spend at other churches. I don't get to go to a lot of other churches on Sundays, but but every so often, like when we go up visit our kids, we got a week off, we're off in Michigan seeing my family, we get to go to other churches. And I don't know that I have ever walked into a church where you're greeted in the lobby by the noise and the energy that you experience at our church, especially if you come in between 9:30 and 11, right? It's like you walk in and it's just like pow, energy, life. That's our culture. And I think the reason people are like, oh, hey, something's going on here is because of the culture. So here's a quote for us for tonight. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Okay? Which I think is kind of fun. And because I'm a big culture guy, I obviously agree with Peter Drucker on this. He suggests at least 3 reasons why this is true. Strategy is essential, but it's theoretical. I completely agree with that. You know, I love strategy. Like Risk is one of my favorite games, but strategy is always theoretical, right? It's always like, here's the plan. But culture is real. Culture shapes how people behave. Other ways to put that are like culture is what you put up with, it's what you allow, it's what you encourage, but culture really shapes how people behave. If you are in an organization or you're on a team or you're in a family, you very quickly figure out how you operate, how you don't operate. And if you can't find a way to fit into that culture, you always feel out of place, right? And one of the best ways to test this is in a marriage relationship, to talk about how your different family's culture was. Like, how does your family disagree versus how your spouse's family disagree? And often what you have is similar to what we saw last week. Like, my family is like, if we disagree, we just don't talk about it. That's my family. Like, we're just like, we're all very stoic. We just, we don't need very little emotion. Mary Ann's family, they would just get it out there. Wow. Right? So when you come together and you're both coming out of two different cultures, it's like, whoa, what's this? And it's like, are you being quiet because you hate me? Well, no, I just thought that's how we do things. Are you yelling because you hate me? No, I just thought that's how we do things, right? That's all culture. And the same is true on a team, the same is true in a company, the same is true in a classroom, and the same is true in a church, is that how people behave. So at the gathering, what we strive for is a culture where people are happy and friendly and talk and engage with each other. The first draft of our new building modification, they were trying to create as many seats as they could in our worship center, and they pushed the back wall of the worship center way into the lobby. We backed this thing up this far, and you can gain 100 more seats just with like 15 feet. And we're like, yeah, but then we lose the lobby. But we can't lose the lobby because that's such a part of our culture. We take that away, we lose who we are. And so culture shapes how people behave. And if culture resists the strategy, then the strategy will fail. And this is a really good place to talk just leadership. If you're a leader and you have a strategy, whether it's for a long-term vision or for a project or whatever else it might be, and you try to implement your strategy, but the culture, so the people around you, they don't think it's a good idea, or it doesn't fit the culture, then it's going to be a disaster. When I was at my last church, I was an associate pastor, and this was a bigger church than the gathering. We hired an executive pastor. We just hit that point where we need to have an executive pastor. We brought this guy in, and he'd been an executive pastor in lots of different places. He's an older guy. And I remember, I don't know if it was 2 weeks in or 3 weeks in, he came into my office and he sat across my desk from me and he said, hey, he's like, I think I need to fire Phil. So can you give me some reasons why? And I just said, I'm not comfortable with this conversation. I don't know what to do with this. Like, I'm not going to have this conversation with you. Well, no, it's okay. I won't tell anybody. And I'm like, you're talking to me about him. I'm pretty sure you're going to go talk to somebody else about me, so I'm not playing this game. Well, needless to say, this guy lasted 6 months, then he was gone. Because he didn't take the time to figure out the culture. And he tried to come in and implement, he had a super control and command kind of style, and he was going to, here we go, and he just completely missed the culture, and as a result, his strategy completely failed. So, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Now, here's where we're going to take our big shift, okay? And this is where I'm not sure this is going to work. We're going to shift into talking about just more generically vision, mission, strategy, all that kind of stuff, kind of generically in a leadership sense. But what I want you to try to do is, I'm walking through this, think about what we talked about the gathering and how it matches up. Does that make sense? All right, so there's lots of leadership words that people use to talk about vision, mission, purpose, strategy, roadmap, imagination, direction, blah, 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 right? Lots of it is super helpful. And depending on who you read, their language and their wording is different. I mean, you can, say, hey, there's this general idea that vision is the where you're going, and mission is the how you're going to get there, and purpose is what you do, right? For me personally, I think everything you do is different. Every place you go is different. Every team you're part of is different. Every culture is different. And so these words are not necessarily super important as long as everybody knows what you're talking about. So at the gathering, when we say, hey, we are a Christ-centered, grace-oriented church on a mission to connect more people with Jesus, you're like, well, is that your vision statement or your mission statement or your purpose statement? We're like, no, it's just who we are, right? As long as we all know what it means, it's who we are, then we're okay. So for our conversation tonight, I'm going to try to bring some clarity so you know how I'm using terms, okay? So I'm going to use 3 terms tonight. I'm going to talk about vision, I'm going to talk about strategy, I'm going to talk about execution, Okay? And when I talk about those three things, here's what I mean. Vision is who are we and where are we going? Okay? Or you could say, who do we want to be? I'll give you a chance at the end to personalize this. So who am I? Who do I want to be? Where do I want to go? You can think of this as the destination. That's one of my favorite ways to think about this. Like, I'm going to go on a trip. This is my destination. Strategy is the how. How is this going to happen? How are we going to do it? How are we going to become it? And then execution is actually the action, right? Because if this is all you have is vision and strategy, that's meaningless, right? The culture is built at the execution level. So let's talk first about vision. Vision is the direction. So a great way to think about it is if I say, I want to go to Portland, right? And you guys can see that Liam is in Portland. And you might be wondering, where's Emma? Well, Liam's a good son who shares his location with me. So if I put Portland into my Google Maps, Liam pops up. Sometimes Emma does, and sometimes she doesn't. But if I wanted to go visit Liam, I would say my destination, where I want to go, my vision is getting to Liam. Does that make sense? Okay, so I mean, it's a pretty simple thing. Don't worry about the different routes yet. Just think about the destination. If I am leading a team and we're saying, hey, we got to really focus in on 2026. What's our vision going to be like for 2026? I know it's only 2025 now, but it's a good time to start thinking about 2026. And we might say, well, where do we want to be at the end of the year? Or what do we want to have accomplished at the end of the year? I'm gonna test Andrew here. I'm gonna guess he won't get this because we've been caught up in the whirlwind for a little while. But we'll see if he knows. Do you know what our big project vision, however you want to say it is, for 2025 is?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think you'd be able to get it. Right. Which is a leadership failure by somebody.
He's not with the
I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
It starts with finish.
Finish well.
Well,
It starts with finish.
it starts with. Do you know it, Lincoln?
I mean, I don't want to like.
Oh, go
Wow.
for it.
This
Is
is
it finish the building?
That's the first half.
Oh
of it.
yeah, I got it.
Okay, what's the second?
Without losing momentum.
Yeah, that's it. All right.
Okay.
Finish the building without losing momentum. That's our goal for 20. See, he didn't know the words.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna try to say what are our 6 kind of key things because I don't know if I can list them off the top of my head. But that's not important right now. Okay, so we want to say our destination as a staff team for this year is to finish the building. That's our vision. Now, part of our vision is also the honeycomb, right? That never leaves. That's always a part of what we're doing. But we also recognize in this year of transition, this building thing is big and it has the real potential to be a distraction to the church. And so we want to make sure that it doesn't become that. And so our big vision for this year is finish the building without losing momentum. And now in other years, our vision would probably be more focused on something in the honeycomb. Like we might say, hey, we really want to drill down on kids and youth, or hey, we really want to ramp up care. In 2024, one of our big emphasis was on community outreach. That's why at the beginning of 2024, we hired Annie. Said we need to start out with a good leader, and she's done a great job with that. So, but this is our destination. Vision is where are we going? The next step after deciding the vision is to decide strategy. So just real quick, a couple verses for strategy. Just because I think this is fun, that there's lots of books that have been written about this kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, it's all ancient wisdom, right? That God had before any of us. And it aligns with him. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. Which is essentially, can we go back to the map for a second? You may say, hey, I want to go see Liam, but if you don't start to think about how you're going to get there, you might end up in Florida, right? So you got to take the time to figure out how you're going to get somewhere. So you know what the vision is. Well, how are you going to take the time to get where you want to go? All right, let's go to the next verse. Because this is Jesus.
Can you go back to that verse?
Yeah, go back to Proverbs.
What does that say? What does that mean?
Yeah. Go ahead. All right. So the plans of the diligent. That's a terrible word, right?
I'm lost in that.
All right. Let's talk. What's this word mean?
Prudent. You're
Prudent. Another good King James word.
Like
Hardworking.
focused.
Hardworking, focused. Good.
Dependable.
Yeah. Dependable. Yeah. All right. So here's a simple trick with Proverbs. Okay. In Proverbs, you're almost always talking about one of four people. There's a wise man, there is a simple man, there is a foolish man, and there is the mocker, okay, or the scorner, if you like King James. So those are your four main characters of Proverbs. Most of the time, when you have a word like this is describing a kind of person, it fits one of those, okay? And most of the time, what a verse in Proverbs is going to do is it's going to compare the wise person to one of the other three. Now, occasionally, it's going to compare one of the other three to one of the other three. For example, it says, a simple man can learn from the beatings of a fool, which is to say that even if I'm not super wise, when I see somebody else getting punished for doing something, I can learn not to do that thing. Okay? So just really quick. See, now you got me talking about one of my favorite things, man.
I was confused.
I love this. This is my favorite book. So your hierarchy goes like this. The mocker is the person who hope is gone, right? They're gone. They will not learn. Their mind is closed. They're done. The fool is the person who always thinks they're right but is usually wrong, right? They're the person who's headed down a bad road, but there's still hope if they can kind of turn it around. The simple person is the person who just is kind of like dumb, but doesn't not really evil, but just not very smart and just doesn't have good advice. But the whole purpose of Proverbs is to move the simple person to being a wise person. That's the whole book. And so Solomon starts the book by talking to his sons, like, let me tell you how to go from simple to wise. Now, if you're a fool, you need to get to simple, and then you can get to wise also. So, diligent is a description of the wise person. So that's all that explanation say. This is comparing the wise person to the fool. So the diligent person is the wise person, and what does the wise person do? The wise person makes plans. And when the wise person makes plans, that leads to abundance, okay? Versus the fool, who is hasty. And if you're hasty, the opposite of abundance is poverty. And so really, to try to reword this, which is one of my most recommended things to do with Proverbs, is to rewrite every proverb in your own word. I would probably say, taking time to plan keeps you from making bad mistakes. So that's,
Yeah, makes sense.
a lot of other ways you phrase it. So, you guys haven't been here as long, so I don't know when the last time I talked about Proverbs was, but I read a chapter of Proverbs every day. So today is, what did I read this morning? The 10th? Is it the 10th? Yeah, so I read Proverbs 10 today. And tomorrow I'll read Proverbs 11. So there's 31 Proverbs, so there you go. And then you run it back at the end of the month. And typically what I do is I look for one verse in there. I'm like, okay, that's my verse for the day. That's my wisdom for the day. So, all right, good. Let's go to Jesus' wisdom, which is also very similar. He's actually here, he's talking about deciding to follow him. And he's basically saying to people, hey, it's costly to follow me, so you need to think about it first. But he says, which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Again, he's saying exactly the same thing as Proverbs. Is if you want to accomplish something, before you start, you have to make a plan. Okay? That's strategy. So vision is, this is what I want to do, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to become. Strategy is, all right, before I try to do that, I'm going to take the time and make a plan to do it. So I'm going to run through these really quick, okay? But I'm going to give you some strategic principles here, just to kind of think of if I want to make a plan to do something. So do this in your mind. Think about your leadership contexts, or even just think about something you want to accomplish in life, okay? Just kind of put that in the back of your mind. That's my destination. So let's see, for me, I'm going to say I want to, we were talking about golf this morning. And I've played more golf this year than I played the last 3 years combined.
You're welcome.
Because I've played 4 times. So I used to play all the time. So I'm thinking, okay, so I'd like to, by the end of the summer, I'd like to be shooting in the 30s when I play 9. That's my vision, okay? And I think I can get back to that. So how am I gonna do it? So this is my strategy. So here's how you create a strategy. Start with a destination and work backward. Okay, so for me, okay, so if I want to get into the 30s, first I gotta get into the 40s, right? What do I have to do to get into the 40s? Well, I gotta get out of the 60s. And right? I gotta get off the tee, or I gotta chip better, or I gotta putt better. I gotta just start thinking backwards of, what does this look like for me? If I wanna go to Oregon, how do I get to Oregon? Well, I gotta get to Idaho first. And before I get to Idaho, I gotta get to Utah. Before I get to Utah, you see, I'm just gonna think backwards. Then I'm gonna ask myself some questions. I'm gonna ask myself who, what, where, when, and how. I just gotta run these questions through my mind. Because asking these questions is super helpful, right? Like, who can help me with this? Who's gonna get in the way of this, right? Who's going to be impacted by this? What do I need to do in order to make this happen? What might stop me? Where do I need to go? Where can I find resources? When should I do different things? What's my timeline? You ask these questions. The next one is identify the big steps first, and then figure out the smaller steps. So can we go back to the map? I'm making you bounce all over the place here. All right, so to identify the big steps first, I would say if I want to go from here to there, it's at least 3 days of driving. So I know that day 1, I want to be somewhere in Iowa. So probably like Iowa City might be a good target for me. Or maybe Des Moines. I got that right? The Iowa people here? Somewhere in here? Is that right? Okay, so somewhere in here is where I want to be that first day. If I'm going to make it in 3 days, I got to be in Wyoming by the 3rd day. So somewhere, there's not a lot of cities in Wyoming though. So I got to look at the map. Like I'm either going to stop here, which is Cheyenne's up here, I think. Here, or if I try to make it all the way to here, there's actually a really good breakfast place. It's right across the street from a truck stop, and they've got the most amazing breakfast. And I can't even think of the name of the town, but it's right before you cross into Utah. That's where I want to get. So now I'm like, but if I'm working backwards, if I got to be here by the end of day 2, I probably do have to get to Iowa City, because otherwise that's a long, long haul. But if I make it to here, then it's going to be about 10 hours to get to here. I can do that, right? Or if I say, as I'm looking at this, I'm realizing my big steps are too big, so maybe I need to break it down into 4. Then I can be like, I'll get here, and then I'll get here, and then I'll get here. So identify the big steps first, right? So in any project, we can go back to our list of strategic thinking. Identify the big stuff first. In our vision for this year, some of our big things to keep the project, complete the project without losing momentum, some of our big things are, we don't want to do anything to slow the project down. So one of our goals is when our builders ask for something, we drop everything. We get them what they need as fast as they ask for it, because we don't want to be a hold up on our end. One of the things is over communicate all the time. And so we got to talk to each other all the time, because one of the worst things you can do in a project like this is let it distract you and lose your momentum. All right, what's our next one? Consider known and potential roadblocks. So like, what's going to stop me? In my goal to be in the 30s by the end of the summer, what might stop me from that? Well, if I don't play, that will stop me from that. What else might stop me is this is going to interfere with my swing a little bit. So I might need to lose a little bit of this, and that will clean me up a lot. I can work on my flexibility. Maybe that would help me a little bit. Lots of things like that. And then the last thing is to prioritize, schedule, and document. I'm a huge fan of this. Like, anytime I make a plan, I'm writing it down, because there's just something about writing something down that makes me feel like I'm going to get this done, right? If I don't write it down, I can always fudge on it. Like, yeah, I know I said I'd get that done by the end of the month, but I'm going to move it just a little bit.
That's the old part.
What's that?
That's
That's my C. That is my C for sure. All right. Then last thing, and then we're going to move through this really quickly. Execution. Okay. this is where it happens. I think there's 4 elements to execution. The first is people, and we talked about that a little bit in the strategy, but the reality is, in almost any pursuit, you have to work with other people. Communication is critical. Communication essentially means communicating what needs to change, what has happened, those types of things. Accountability. Accountability is really just me setting up something that is a reward or punishment system, right? And sometimes it can be a relationship with somebody else. Sometimes it can be a scoreboard. We have a scoreboard for our connections process, right? That we have a board with a bunch of Post-it notes. So anybody who's here for the first time, they get their name on a Post-it note and they go in the first box. And then when they move to the second time, when they show up a second time, we all clap as we move them into the second one. I mean, it's a silly little small thing, but that's accountability. It's a built-in system that rewards good stuff. And then the last thing, and maybe the most important thing, is discipline, right? It's building the habits, the rhythms that you need to keep going, to make sure you do what you want to do. And here in discipline, and you can figure this out on your own, a big part of discipline is being able to focus and refocus. And then also being able to prioritize and reprioritize. Because as I go through any project, any vision, anything like that, there are times when something changes. And I have to be able to refocus it and figure out what's next. All right, we're going to come back to this in a second. But before we do, I'm going to do a quick commercial. Okay, I told you it was going to be really disjointed tonight. I introduced this concept to you a couple weeks ago. I want to tell you about what's coming next for Leadership 101. We've got 2 opportunities, and you can do either, both, or none. All right? But just really quickly, the Ministry Intensive, this is going to be like a lab experience. So like when you were in school and you had biology, you had like classroom, and then you had the lab. This is going to be like a lab experience that's really focused on ministry. So if when I was talking about the gathering stuff tonight, you're like, oh, that's really interesting. I'd like to know more about this. You might really enjoy this. So we're going to walk through in this, like, how do you teach from the Bible? How do you prepare a lesson from the Bible? And then you'll have the opportunity to actually do it. Don't let that scare you off if that scares you, okay? Because it'll just be a really small thing and it'll be super fun. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how to recruit people to join you in ministry. We'll probably talk about how to share your faith. We're going to talk to just a lot of things that just are a part of what is it like to do ministry, whether it's in a church setting or any other setting. What does that look like? The marketplace impact is going to function a lot more like a small group, like a discussion group. It'll be very topical. It'll be focused all around how do I live out my faith and impact the people around me at my job. That's the main focus. And it'll be much more of like a group where we'll sit down, we'll discuss, whether it be discuss a passage of scripture or discuss a chapter from a book. It'll be all discussion based in a small group kind of format. We don't have dates set on these yet because we're gonna actually want to hear a little bit from you before we do that. I'm gonna give you a chance to do that in a second. But before that, I have an assignment for you. And I know normally I don't do the assignments, but this is a mandatory assignment. Okay? So here it is. Complete your personal vision plan using the handout. So here's the handout. You don't have to do this tonight. You take it home, and honestly, it says mandatory, but you know, what are we going to do if you don't do it, right? Throw off the culture.
No,
Take away the donuts. Take away the donuts. Well, I got bad news. The donuts are gone for the next 6 weeks, so. But they'll be back. They'll be
We're
back.
in Centerville anyway, so it's not that far from the
Right. You know what? We should just say to people there will be no donuts at Centerville High School, but just drive by Bill's on your way.
Okay.
I think that's what I'll probably do. All right. So that's your first assignment. Here's the second one. I've got a survey for you here. Can we set a 5-minute timer? So I'm going to give you this, and I would like you to fill this out right now. The survey that I'm giving to you now, this one, right now. What's that? What, a survey? Yeah. Why is that? This is, we wanted to give you this tonight so that if we want to have any conversation about it next week, we still can. But I want you to take 5 minutes, and as best you can in 5 minutes. If you need more time, then that's okay. But you are not allowed to leave tonight until you've turned the survey in. And if you're watching this and you aren't here tonight, we're going to put a link up so you can do this online. All right? But you guys have to do it tonight. All right, set that timer. It's going. Good. Oh, right, yeah.
Then we get second finish.
Wish I had more time to talk about communication, though, it might be good lesson, practical lesson of why it's important to come back to things.
Yeah, so,
Well, you said you didn't know,
Oh, yeah.
in the context of the conversation, it escaped you. Well, Lincoln, man,
I don't wanna do that. I'll be
I
like,
don't care.
hey man, I listen.
I know what my downfalls are, that's one of them.
But that was our mission for.
Yeah, it was the same, finish the project, that was momentum. That's what we're using.
Yeah.
That's good. No way, no way, John Deere.
Do you think John Deere would have won more without it? That's a better argument, is Tiger, or not Tiger, better argument is Jack Nicklaus.
Phil had a little bit of that.
Yeah, maybe Phil would have won without the gun, because that is fast, but he's fit. But Phil is the most underrated golfer in the history of golf.
Did you see how Chip and Minions?
Like behind this, like it was crazy. If he hadn't played at the exact same time as Tiger, yeah, he might have been 7 more years. This guy just won 60. How many majors? One this weekend. Good. But one. He's got 12.
5 inches enough. What we shoot out there, 130. 150.
Playing the Grizzlies. Yeah.
Tipping out probably 77. 7,700 yards. Something like that.
Oh, balls, you see where it lands from. With it being that big, I'm like, big fight program. Yeah, I'll take it right here. That was good discussion.
Is that enough time for everyone? Finish out the mandatory homework?
That's what, this isn't homework, this is
The mandatory
the pop quiz.
work.
Seat work. Yeah.
There will be a test. But this is for a grade.
This is for a grade.
guys, we're gonna get back into discussion. It seems like you guys did pretty good job finishing that, doing that mandatory work. That's awesome. But we have a discussion for y'all as we close out tonight. What is something in your future, near or distant, that you want to approach more strategically, more intentionally, but in a strategic way? Think about that. Something in the future, near or far, that you want to do a little bit more strategically.
Are you asking us right now?
Yeah, if you guys have any answers.
When you wanna strangle your kids? Just, pump the brakes, sit back like, okay,
Yeah.
I need to handle this a little bit better. I mean, we do a pretty good job, but with the kids, sometimes they test your patience and you wanna kind of get them.
So possibly in the very near future, as if when you go home.
Don't abuse them, I
Yeah.
promise.
Like our youngest daughter, she's mouthy as all get up.
Yeah,
She thinks she's literally Einstein.
yeah.
Hey, that was
It's
me.
honest.
Yeah, she gets it honest, I guess. But just handling her better.
So something we're gonna work on very strategically is, let's just be a little more calm to the kids. I
Yeah,
got
she
you.
gotta calm down a little.
I wanna jump on that one though, can I say
Yeah,
something?
of course.
So I think that's actually a really good one, because there are a lot of levels to that, right? Cause there's the level of working on your own immediate response, but also putting maybe into practice a longer term goal of, you know, how do I work with my kids so they don't get me to this point, right? And then, you know, what do I need to develop in myself so that I, you know, don't feel like I get to this point? So I think that's an awesome one.
And I wanna add to it, actually. This may be most of us, but you tend to be more out of line or rude with the people that are closer to you.
Yeah.
And I wanna be, it's gonna sound bad, but I wanna be opposite. Like, if I'm gonna be mean or rude, I want to be with somebody that means nothing to me in my life.
That's
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean it, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah, but if you
But
did,
in hindsight, like,
You
I want,
wanna love the people
I wanna
closer
love
to you
people
better than the people who are
Yes.
away from you.
yeah.
how she said.
The family, you spend the most time with them, you know, it's
Yeah,
like
like-
easy to get on your skin.
Just pump the brakes, basically.
Okay, pumping
All
the
that,
brakes.
Pump the brakes.
You know, slow to become angry. I gotcha. If you would ask me like 7 months ago when I was figuring out what I want to do with my life, I was like, you know, I love Jesus. I want to learn more about him, learn more about connecting others with him. That's when I made a decision to go to school for ministry. So strategically for that, you know, I applied to colleges, get accepted, and now I'm in a school for that. So that's something I had to do very strategically. So I'm like, you know, I can learn by myself. I want to learn through professors who have studied this and or get paid to teach it. So that's something I worked on recently to be strategic. Anyone else? Yes.
So I've got two things. One is networking. I'm an engineer, so it took me a long time to realize that a huge part of everything you do is getting to know people, rather than just doing a good job on tasks.
Right.
And because they don't really teach you that in engineer school, they teach you to do a good job on your tasks.
Sure.
And so I've gotten better at that, but I want to continue to improve in that area. The other thing is human performance is my focus. I work in the human performance wing. That's what I love. I love to help people do things they didn't know they could do. Sometimes it's running a mile, sometimes it's running an ultra, sometimes it's lifting or fixing their nutrition.
That's cool.
And I love doing that, but I don't necessarily get to do it at work, which is fine because I work for the human performance wing. But anyway, I want to be more strategic about putting myself in places where I get to help people do that, because I am fulfilled when I help people do that. It makes me feel like I'm valuable, which I get it. I know I'm valuable, not for that reason, right? My value was given to me the moment I was created.
Amen.
But I want to be more strategic about that.
That's cool. That's a good goal.
In youth, I work with mostly with like the high school kids.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten the chance to really grow that relationship with some of them, and I want to, you know, get to the point where they like really want to go to church, you know, for the reason that because, you know, they love Jesus and like that they want to continue, like especially when they leave high school and they, you know, are in college and whatnot. Because I noticed that, you know, that tends to happen when kids go to college and whatnot, you know, they stop going to church. And,
Yeah.
you know, when Dave was talking about continuing momentum, and I've noticed that, you know, with the youth changes, you know, it's been harder for the high school kids to want to, you know, get in there because, you know, they're with the middle school and, you know, and so I've been trying to be intentional with like talking to the high school boys and stuff, and I'm trying to be, you know, sort of a role model, and I think it's worked in some ways. You know, I've got, you know, some of them, I don't know how they got my number, but they keep texting me, and I think they maybe see me as like an older brother kind of
Yeah,
role, and, which is great. You know, I'm like, that's awesome, and so, you know, I want to continue that, and so, you know, get to the point where, you'll be at a point when you need to go to church, not when, you know, your friends won't always be there. So it's like to continue that, you know, after, you know, youth and whatnot. So that's what I'm trying to be intentional with.
That's good. That's very strategic. Like a couple slides ago, like having the end in mind
Yeah.
and working backwards. Like for
Sure.
you wanted to have that relationship with them and help them kind of be that older brother, kind of role model role.
Yeah.
And what did you do? You started building closer relationships with them, and now they're texting you,
Yeah.
you know, which is cool.
Great.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Mhm.
Thanks, Bessie.
Mine is kind of a spin-off of yours. I wouldn't say I want to go into ministry school. However, I do want to have a more God-centered mind and
Yeah.
life. So trying to change actions or add things, you know, the way you talk,
Yeah.
or approach people or not approach people. So I've been on this. I brought back the WWJD whenever we're in a situation. And
Absolutely.
I always go WWJD, you know,
Yeah,
or
like
Jesus wouldn't do that because he wants to strangle me. But I guess that's just where I want my life to go. My life hasn't been the worst, obviously, but it hasn't been what I want it to be, and so that's my goal, is to have a happier, peaceful, more God-centered life. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. A God-centered mindset. I think those bracelets are a reminder is super helpful.
Yeah.
You know, people say it's so corny, but like, what would Jesus do? It stops you from doing a lot of things,
I know.
right?
Like I was just sitting there one day thinking, and I'm just trying to remind myself, and then it just like popped in my head from, you know, when we were so young, and I was like, you know, you didn't notice it then. It was just a cool thing to wear, those bracelets,
Yeah.
because that was the thing. But then I don't know, as an adult, and you're just thinking about it, it's different, especially with the class, to like really apply that to your life. It's not just school bracelet.
But if you think about it, literally, in the moment that the devil gets you
Yeah.
and says, you said, what would Jesus do? For some reason, literally, it'll make you just go down the right path. I mean,
Yeah.
it will.
Absolutely.
It really will.
So actually, that phrase comes from a book. It's almost 100 years old now. It's
Oh,
called
wow.
In His Steps. So I don't know if you can find it on Amazon anymore, but it's actually a really good, it's worth a read. So,
We're constantly battling our flesh. It's like, oh, what would Jesus do? What do I want to do? It's probably not the same.
It's definitely not.
It's been a struggle.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in like a really big. Sorry, I'm taking everybody else's time. Let's not do that.
You're fully good. That's what we're here for.
I didn't grow up in like a super religious.
Upbringing.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we didn't go to church. Like my family
Same.
believed in God, but it wasn't. Like actually, my dad grew up a Jehovah's Witness because his dad was Jehovah's Witness,
Sure.
and then now he's totally flip flopped over to Christian, and he's a pastor now.
Praise God.
So, and I was in a split household, and as I turned into an adult, I kind of found church on my own, through hard times, and then I like really fell away from it and like spiraled really bad.
Sure.
And I guess I can thank my dad for kind of like, you know, maybe stabilizing his life and kind of being a rock. He like would force me when I didn't want to. I hate to say force, but you know, he's like, in this church, in this house, we go to church, you know.
Sure.
I don't know, and that kind of helped open my eyes. So he's a good example of like, kind of life that I want to have, and he's centered around God, so that's kind of like what I want to go towards.
And he went down the wrong path. You know, he did a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
And now he's like the greatest guy you ever meet in your life.
That's awesome. Yep, influence everywhere. And now that you both want to do more God-centered mindsets, you know, your kids will see that.
And that's kind of the main thing, I think, because they're my bonus kids, and whether they were mine to birth or whatever, it just, I didn't have anybody in my life that I needed to be an influence for, so I was just this like tumbleweed,
Sure.
you know, like I don't really know what I'm doing, I'm just here, sure, we'll do that.
Yep.
And I guess like, just them, you know, I see them watching and
Oh, yeah.
learning, and it's like, oh, I shouldn't have did that. You know, I shouldn't have. And so then it's like, okay, well, to avoid that, I need to do this, and that just led me to I need church, and you know, I need to learn, so I need to get back into church. And
She literally sends a Bible verse, numerous ones, every single day in our group chat.
Let's go.
She's doing it.
Discipleship in the household, so huge. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else?
She took all her time.
You're good. You're good. Anyone else?
I'd say as far as
Yeah.
my approach more strategically at this point, unlike what you were just saying, I've been in church all my life.
Yep.
And which doesn't make life easy, but it's
No.
but I have been, and I've served in all different aspects of the church, everything from managing the softball team to a deacon and everything in between.
Nice.
But that's in the past, and my approach now is I'm at the gathering now. What's my role? What will my role be at the gathering?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. I think we got 2 more slides just for our homework. Take homework. Finish reading any chapters in Developing the Leader Within You 2.0 that you haven't already. Work on your personal vision plan. And then the Leadership 101 Facebook group, post an action you are inspired to take after reading the chapter. And then extra work, complete at least 4 days in your journal. Choose a small project you can complete in a week and approach it with the vision, strategy, execution framework, and finish it before our next meeting. And then, is there like a book we can do?
Yeah, so I meant to bring those books to show you, but there's 2 books that kind of I think are really helpful for some of the stuff we're talking about tonight. One is called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's put out by the Franklin Covey group. So it's Stephen Covey's son is one of the authors of that. And the other one is Silos, Politics, and Turf Wars by Patrick Lencioni, one of my favorite authors. I don't think you were here yet when we read that. Our staff read that book last year. So did our board. So this is another good book. So if you want to dive deeper into some of this stuff, those are some good places to start.
Right on. Well, I think that's what we got tonight. I'm going to pray for us before we leave, just to wrap things up. So let's pray, guys. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you again for just being here right in these conversations. God, we can feel your presence in so many different ways. And God, I pray that these words we heard tonight, we will just remember them as we go throughout the rest of our week and the rest of our lives. God, I pray we will just have the ending goal, the goal in mind, and we are able to work backwards, God. And whatever that goal might be, God, we ultimately know our goal here on earth is to connect more people to you, God. So I pray we just won't lose sight of that. And I pray you'll just give us the strength and wisdom to complete any goals we might have this week and continue to be great leaders for the kingdom. Thank you, God, for all that you do. In Jesus' glorious name we say, amen.
Amen. Thank you, guys. Thank you for filling these out. I appreciate that.
Like we had a choice.
What can't leave?
I just took pictures.